So as the title says here, and as we've been hearing, cities are the problem because that's where most of us live, where increasingly most of humanity, the impacts of humanity are concentrated. But cities are the answer because they offer us an incredible dynamic that if we learn to take advantage of it and we apply it to our great challenges, we can have a very effective result. Some of my own research is in greenhouse gas emissions, and I've been looking at this. The incredible delta, look at the difference in the red here down below, which is a city like Stockholm versus a typical city in the United States. We're not talking about a few percentage points. We're talking about huge deltas of increase of greenhouse gas emissions if we get this wrong, and many other related implications. And the same is true, unfortunately, around the world, that we're exporting this pretty dreadful model of urbanism right around the world, looking at South America, China, India, Eastern Europe, object buildings and superblocks and so on. We need to understand, as Jane Jacobs said, the kind of problem a city is, a problem of organized complexity, as she said, capable of metabolic growth and dynamics. We need to understand and tease out this dynamic and be able to put it to use. We can understand from other disciplines, as Nassim was saying, the kind of pragmatic lessons from things like network theory, understanding how a system of connections functions in an urban system, as we understand already in social and economic systems. And then these are related to other insights that are coming out of other fields in the sciences of complexity, as we're beginning to tease out, understanding the processes of self-organization that happen in cities and autocatalytic effects, and how people can work together and generate some of the effects. Again, Asim was talking about Kevin Lynch. We need a theory of good city form. We need to inform our design strategies and have that on the table so that we can challenge it and analyze it and understand what's working or not. If we don't do that, as Jane Jacobs said, we're likely to be guilty of pseudoscience. We're not much better than the plague doctors who use their potions and incantations. We need the urban equivalent of a germ theory in medicine or a particle theory in physics, a kind of grand unified theory of good city form. And I think we have the resources available to do that. So very briefly, I'm going to run through some of those. Thinking of the city as a complex self-organizing network consisting of human beings and their exchanges. That's how the creativity and the dynamism that you heard about last night happens. Second point is that these cities function best when they feature pervasive connectivity and inclusion, as my friend Luis Bettencourt at Santa Fe Institute has pointed out. And there are certain spacings of that are critical that we have to get right. Some research I and my colleagues have done showing about a 400-meter spacing between principal arterials is very important, down to the finer grain of blocks and plots that have to be spaced about right. This is my hometown of Portland, and that continuous fabric stretches right over freeways and over, in this case, this is a big shopping mall, Pioneer Place, so it's possible to have walkable urbanism all the way around. Here's a hospital, a Good Samaritan Hospital, that has walkable fabric all the way around it. Portland State University, which has a There we go. Which has again, a walkable carpet of urbanism all the way around it. Industrial districts in Portland that also have that walkable fabric. So it is possible to maintain a continuous walkable arterial system in a modern city. And I think we've got to get that right if we're going to meet the great challenges. And we have to get down to the scale of individual buildings and spaces. This is a street where I used to live in London. And what you'll notice is that there are many different places that people can occupy and move through and control the spaces and interact with one another. And that forms a very complex network of spaces that people can control and move through and modify as they need to and as they move through the spaces. And that's critical. We need that self-organizing network to empower as designers if we're going to be able to meet these challenges. And look what's happened over a period of about 7 years. I came back to this place, very interesting, and you'll see the transformation over time where people have actually added little structures of fences and hedges and different things and actually mutated that. That's what happens over time in a great city, and that's what happens in great cities like Venice over centuries. Here's a situation over about 100 years going with the very sort of boring cadastral plan of Venice on the left, the transformation of that over time into a much richer and more complex structure as the city that we all know and love. And that, I would suggest to you, is what great cities are all about, what great urbanism is all about. It's a surprisingly complex, but it's a self-organizing network structure. And it has biophilic characteristics as well. It has characteristics that we can understand and interact with, and we find desirable if we're going to live in those places, in urban places that have higher density. That's very important as well. So I think we have the basis of what we might call a grand unified theory of how human beings use urban space and how we can support that with design. Going from the smallest spaces inside the buildings out to the outside into the largest systems of the city and the networks of the city. This is a point that my friend Christopher Alexander also used in his pattern language theory, using networks of design in order to create tools that will allow us to exploit these powers of self-organization and complex adaptive systems. That's been incredibly useful in things like software design. Marvelous, many of you may know that's the basis of the iPhone and iPad and other software. And also the basis of Wiki and Wikipedia. My colleague Ward Cunningham and I are working on a system right now that will use those tools to develop much more complex, more self-organizing kinds of processes. So I think we do have the tools, the resources at hand. I think we need to replace our outmoded and failing models and ways of thinking about novelty and art and the sort of cloaking on top of that. We have a great opportunity coming up with Habitat 3 in 2016 to define what the UN is calling a new urban agenda. And I think we're very excited to be working on that, and I hope we'll have the opportunity to work with some of you on that as well. Thank you.